Well, good afternoon and good evening. How you doing?
Good evening from London.
Yes.
I'm just disheveled. I was like, I'll be back in a minute. And then you went live. And I'm like,
I went ahead and went live. I thought I'd go live, even if you weren't back in the chair.
I'm
I
here.
thought I could give you a great grand introduction,
It's
just
all right.
in case.
I'll get you to it. Anyway, it's lovely to see you, honey.
And wonderful to see you as well.
Thank you very much.
And you're looking smashing.
Thank you very much.
So.
It's very kind of you to say.
Well, yes, I'm a kind person.
Yes.
That way. So, welcome to everybody. Welcome to the program. This is me, Scotty Roberts, and my co-host, whose name is not correct.
I'm going to change it as we speak.
I am going to edit your name right now.
I'm doing it as we speak. Bear with me.
There it is. I am Roberts. She is Robertson.
I'm done it.
There it is.
I'm sorry.
It's one of those afternoons, evenings over there. So
it is. This is evening, and the ladies that are joining us, they're from my neck of the woods. So yes, they're here.
All right. Good to see you, ladies. Good to see everybody who is here today. Everybody who's joining us. Those who are not in the chat room but are still out there, you can come and join the chat room if you'd like. Join in the conversation, and hope you have a good time here. Wendy, this is our, believe it or not, it's our 13th show of this second season. So we're already halfway through season 2, and it took us a year to do it. So
we've had such bad luck. I mean, my health hasn't been great, and it's affected R&R, and it's affected Wicked Women as well. So, but it's so nice to be here. And I was like, we're going to do this today, aren't we? We're going to do it.
We are. We're going to maintain. We're now back onto track with 2 weeks in a row. So
it's a record. Yeah,
it is for the second season anyway. So it's good to have you back.
Yes.
And it's good to see you again, as always. And I hope everybody out there is doing well, and you're ready to maybe contribute a little bit to this episode a little later in. We're going to be addressing, I think, a topic that, how would I say this? This is something that those who experience this know it very well.
Yeah.
And then there are those, I think, that experience it that aren't always quite aware that they're experiencing it, at least by definition. And until they stop and they go, wait a minute, yeah, that kind of defines who I am.
Yeah.
And it can apply to single people. It can apply to married people, people in a relationship, people not in a relationship. It can apply across the board into careers, into workplaces, into social time, or lack of social time. And the topic that we chose today is that lonely in a crowd.
Yeah.
And it's something that I think we've all experienced to one point or another. Hey, JP, good to see you. All right, let's get the party started, he says. Quote the JP. Jeez. And we've got Allison here and Sandra, and we've got Gina, and that's all that are in the chat room so far, but there's a whole lot more of you out there.
They're stalking us from a distance, you know that.
Yes, and that's okay. You can join us from a distance, or you can come on. And Carlene, How you doing? Good to see you as well. And so, Wendy, where do we want to begin with this? Talking about we should define what we mean by this first, and then we can break off into all different kinds of areas of this. But
Well,
loneliness in a crowd.
you have to bear with me because I never even saw the link because it's not come
Oh,
up. It didn't come up on my, so I
it
actually
didn't
didn't
come up on mine either, which was weird. I just went in
know.
2 minutes
What are we
before the
talking about?
show and resent the link.
So
So,
lonely in a crowd. The thing is, I speak from experience where I'm coming from,
mm-hmm.
and I think there's a lot of people I've spoken to in the last couple of months that are experiencing it as well, and in my friends, in my family, and um, you know, I don't mind time on my own. I love time on my own. I
Sure.
absolutely like to have time on my own, but I also get to a point where I'm becoming a bit sick of it, and I feel since Henry died, my house is like a morgue, and even though there's been some moments which have been lovely in my life, which I there's a lot of loneliness in my life, and I've never thought of myself as a lonely person, and in some ways I've shut myself away and deliberately reclused myself, which is what I tend to do. I tend to disappear and recluse myself when I'm not feeling well.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
I think I've also been very disappointed, disillusioned by a lot of things. And I think what happens is you recluse yourself. And for me, like I have also felt when I've been out with other people, there's this loneliness in you that even though when you're with other people and you're in a crowd, etc., I put a very good face on it, but underneath that, I'm feeling, what am I doing here? I just want to go home,
Right.
crawl under the covers, and I have to put, that face on, and because people want to see that bubbly Wendy. They don't want to see the other Wendy. They don't want to see the
Right.
vulnerable Wendy. They want to see the bubbly one. So I think that loneliness. I have a couple of friends, a gentleman, a friend of mine. He often puts on his Facebook page just how lonely and low how he feels. I think it's a common thing that a lot of us experience, and sometimes it's crippling. It's absolutely crippling.
I understand that. And I've been reading some social scientists on this. There's somebody, Bella DiPaolo, PhD. She writes about living single, and which is not what this topic in particular is all about, but it's about singularity,
Yeah.
I think, as opposed to being single. And she was talking in some of the things she wrote. She's talking about single people, and she says they may not be lonely, they may just want to be alone, antisocial, or they may just want to relate to others outside the supreme logic of the couple. And so there are definitely people out there who choose to be alone in life because they prefer that.
Yes, they do.
Um, I could see it, like myself. I could see myself after so many years of having been surrounded by people. I've been a married man in one form or another since I was 21 years old. And uh, I've been married and divorced and married and divorced and sole custodial father of 3 children and married again with 3 more children. I have rarely had any time period in my life where I was alone. There was one time when I was 28 to 29 years old that I lived alone. But then I had a buddy who came to be a roommate. So, talking about living alone, there are some people who might look at that and go, I've been surrounded by people my whole life. Maybe I'd like to be alone for a while. I'd like to have my house stay neat without 4 other people messing it up all the time. And I'm not talking in the big negative sense. I'm talking about you're always picking up after somebody. You're always putting something away. You're always getting on somebody to, hey, can you pick your shit up? Or the
You,
nice way.
you and I are coming from different ends because
Yes.
you're in that. I'd love some time on my own to do things and have peace and quiet. And I'm coming from the area of like I am alone a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and I would like it to change.
Yes. And yeah, and is this thing of being lonely, the different sides of the fence? Is it from the pastures are greener on the other side? If you're always surrounded by people, do you want to be? Boy, I would love to be alone for a while. Or if you have nobody that is, and you have friends in and out, or brief relationships in and out, but overall you're a person alone in life, where you're like, I want the other side of the fence. I want to be somebody who is surrounded by somebody who cares for me, loves me, is around. I got to pick up their dirty clothes and off the floor, even though it bothers me, or whatever. Somebody who drinks my drink, who drank my soda. Oh, I did. Oh, well, thank you. I was saving that. But you got another person, so you're not alone.
But
So,
you're in that bubble, aren't you? Because you've got kids, you
yes,
hardly have much time alone. That I'm in the other bubble where it's like all you hear sometimes is silence, and
yes,
it's become very loud sometimes, and you just think, don't get me wrong, I've been married and I've had all that chaos, although I didn't have the children, but I've had all that chaos and I don't mind it. But I think what you miss is the energy. When you live alone, the energy is missing of having perhaps something else in your life. Because my mum is in her mature years, I should say, before I give away her age, and she lost my stepdad a couple of years ago, and she said to me, she experiences real loneliness, and people forget that elderly people, they do get lonely, and they she says to
sure.
me in her comical way, well, all I'm looking forward to is a visit from the grim reaper. And I'm like, please don't say that. But I think a lot of elderly people do spend a lot of time on their own, especially when COVID hit. If you can remember,
I
um,
can.
how many people were shut in their homes and they
Yeah.
couldn't mix with anybody, and there was so much loneliness.
As we found out, needlessly shut up in our homes for a
Yes.
long period of time.
Yeah.
You all may disagree with that or have different varying opinions in that. That's a different issue altogether, but that's what we are coming to learn. There is somebody who wrote a book, Michael Cobb. It says, now this is a slightly different take on this whole thing. I'm equating loneliness with being single, as a lot of people do, just for the sake of this part of the conversation. He says he's sick and tired of the single person being the avatar of the lonely crowd. We've screwed up beliefs about loneliness, he argues, especially as it relates to being single versus coupled. He refuses to accept the stereotype of singles as lonely and pathetic. He says in his book, quote unquote, they may not be lonely, they may just want to be antisocial. They may just want to relate to others outside the supreme logic of the couple. And that's the quote I gave you a little earlier. And Professor Cobb also rejects the premise that a book about singles has to be a book about sex. He says, I want to suspend questions of sex, sexuality, courtship, to open the possibilities of other questions about what it means to be single or to be alone and to be in solitude with no immediate relational or sexual prospects, or the couple's narrative entering your existence, and the historical belonging in sight. And here's a couple of I want to give you some of these quotes from his book, and then we'll take this and we'll shift it a little bit, because this is not the whole emphasis of what we're talking about today. But in his introductory chapter, he says, the American citizen, now you're not American, Wendy, so you can take this as it applies. You're not a colonial.
I'm not,
Um,
darling, no.
yes. The American citizen, or you can say the citizen, is not a he or a she, but a we. And we, the people, but we, the couple, and the couple, ideally with kids, is how he defines the people that are not alone. The loneliest of us are not necessarily those of us who are actually alone, but rather those of us trying our hardest not to be alone. Get that quote? Listen to this again, Wendy, and everybody. The loneliest of us are not necessarily those of us who are actually alone, but rather those of us trying our hardest not to be alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
He goes on and says, the single can be a figure that offers us not only a private room, but roominess, as opposed to the crowded touch of the couple. And these are all individual quotes throughout this chapter. It says, the single can teach us how to be alone, all one, as the word alone etymologically suggests. All one, all alone. And isolation free of loneliness could ideally give the capacity to be productive and creative. I've noticed that. If I want to be the most productive, it's at times where I'm the loneliest. You get everybody, I got to go stay in a hotel and finish this book. I wonder if by shifting the focus, by making the couple rather than the single, the avatar of the lonely crowd, we can discover figures that are alone, but not lonely, not menaced by the feeling of loneliness that push most of us into the couple, which is really the crowd. Now, there is a big question I want to pose to you, and not of you, but to you, and pose to the rest of everybody in here and to myself. Have we ever felt that we are pushed into relationship or coupleness as a way to avoid loneliness?
Good question. I'm sorry if I'm shifting a lot here tonight. I've got sciatica.
That's all right.
And it's just, it's kicking me tonight, so my sciatica.
Oh.
I don't feel that I've got into...
I give massages, by the way. I just...
do they stretch all the way from the United States to the UK?
Sadly, only vocally.
I have never got into a relationship to get out of loneliness. I have never looked for that, because for me it's all about connection, and I would rather be on my own than be with someone who makes me feel like shit, or just there's no connection with somebody. Being single, I've been single a long time, as in I've been on my own probably more than I've been with somebody out of choice.
Have you ever...
Not always, but some choice.
Not to interrupt your stream of consciousness there, but have you ever entered into a relationship because you were afraid of being alone?
No.
Okay.
No, because...
Anybody else out there?
The reason I've not done it is because I think it's unfair. I think it's unfair to the other person. And when you're, and also you've got to look at life as well. If you date someone, and you're just seeing them to fill the void, to fill the hours away, you're not really being fair. And some people do that. Some people do that. They do that. I'm not like that. I would rather be on my own and spend time on my own than be with someone who's just,
Is that something you've learned and acquired that, or is that something you've always had? I can say this about me.
More time on
that's an acquired thing for me, because the place like where I went to school, I was in a very cloistered Bible college to seminary, and everybody got to get married. Pastor's got to have a wife, and no matter how worldly wise a young girl in her young 20s was at the time, they all deemed themselves at the Bible school as somebody that needs to become a pastor's wife, because all this Bible college was pumping out guys going into the ministry. And so that was the bubble, the social bubble that we all lived in. And so I think it took me a long time to realize that I didn't need to push myself into that to become unlonely. I equated unmarried with loneliness, unmarried with unaccomplished.
I think when I was younger, I went, from my dating history, she goes back into archive mode. I probably didn't have any time on my own. I probably dated. And then I think when my first marriage failed, I got into another relationship, which was just awful. It was the abusive one, just awful. And then when I came out, I met my second husband, so I was in Canada, and my life was very different. It was when that marriage ended, I was on my own for a while, and then then I was in a long-term relationship, and then that ended, and that's when I went, I'm done. I don't want to be in a relationship. I want to, I didn't trust men, so I decided to be alone, and I wanted to be alone, and I loved being alone, and it was great. And I think what's happened is now, especially when COVID hit, it showed us all how loneliness really is, how you can be in a house with lots of people and feel completely alone, how you can be in a house on your own and be so alone. And it's crippling, as in the fact that you just think, I haven't been hugged. I haven't been hugged for a long time, and when someone does hug you, it's like, wow, I've forgotten how wonderful that is to actually have someone touch me, because you can be in a relationship and feel very alone. You can be on your own, and my mom was saying, like, when you lose a partner, a long-term partner, it's there's a crippling loneliness, and I think that people underestimate how people say, oh, I'm fine, I love having time on mine, I love doing my own thing, and it's good, don't get me wrong, it is great. The bed's the same, I get the whole bed to myself, I know what I want to watch, I don't have to argue with anybody, I don't have to, it's wonderful. But I've reached a point where I'm like, I want someone to share my life, I want to wake up with someone, I want to go sleep, make tea, and all, share those things, because I've done with the loneliness. I've done being on my own. So now it's time to find that someone. And also, I think COVID showed me as well, because a lot of people I love died and not from COVID, but they died around COVID time. I never got to say goodbye to a lot of people. And I remember feeling like my freedoms, like all our freedoms, were taken from us. And you realize that when you're actually caught in a trap where you can't get out, you can't see people, you can't bring people in, you have to live with yourself. And yes, I've done that, and it's wonderful, but you also feel incredibly like, I need stimulation, I need to be around other people, I need to have that. And human beings, we're meant to have contact. We're really not meant to spend all our life on our own. We're supposed to share our time, or some of it with somebody. So I think that COVID forced us all to feel. People went and got more dogs, so they weren't feeling alone. They went and bought more cats. So they bought stuff for the house to keep themselves busy, because they couldn't handle the fact that they were on their own, or they couldn't mix with people. I think being alone, there are two camps there. I'm fine on my own. I'd love it. I'd love more time on my own. And those of us that are like, done it, been there, don't want to do it anymore.
I saw a meme. It wasn't a meme, it was a video graphic today, just scrolling through Instagram for a little bit. And I was just looking for it now as we were talking, and I don't see it off the top. Of course, you sign out of Instagram, you go back in, you're never in the same place again. But it showed a man sitting at a desk, black T-shirt, like he's working in his home office and he's working on something. And his wife walks up. She's wearing a T-shirt and blue jeans, and she comes behind him, kind of turns his chair and sits down in his lap and puts her arms around him and her neck, or her face in his neck. And it was very calm. It wasn't meant to be sexual or sensual. And it said something like, if you want, it wasn't a call to action. It said, if you wonder what makes him better at what he does, that's the whole theme of the thing. If you want to, if you're worried about him doing better or why he's not doing better, you want to see him do better. It's the whole thrust of the one-liner there. It said, this is what he needs. And he doesn't just want this. This is what he needs. And this is the truth. I think that there are a lot of men, especially, um, that men there's a two-sided coin here with men. Men can create a lot of loneliness for women,
Yeah,
even when they're with them.
that's true.
They can Men can be one of really basically two ways. They either really love and sustain the woman that they are with, or they are somebody who it's like the men that they have conquered. They have conquered the woman they wanted, and now she's at home or doing her own thing, her job, and he goes on and does his own thing. And there is a lot of neglect in that relationship, and unintended maybe sometimes. It's not that he doesn't love her or anything like that. It's that men tend to go, ah, the conquering part, the caveman part of me sought woman, must have woman, must have woman, dragged by hair into cave. You cook for me, you have sex with me, we make babies. I go back out hunting dinosaurs. And it's kind of that thing that men do. And many times there are men that do that to their wives, their women, that don't realize they pushed her into a spot of being absolutely lonely, of feeling unattached, feeling no affection. Suddenly the guy's getting divorced and he doesn't know why.
Well, I think
What I do?
being in a relationship and feeling alone is awful because, you've
Yes.
all been there. We've been in a room with someone, you're watching telly, they're sitting on another chair or something.
Mm-hmm.
There's this silence, which, yes, you're comfortable with because you know the person, but there's this other silence where you're both not saying what you really need to say or what you really
Mm-hmm.
want, and you feel so alone. I've been with a partner and would have done anything to have had a hug from them or just feel connected,
Sure.
and they were just freezing you out, and
Well,
it's awful.
there's also the flip side of that. There is and I'm talking in the loneliness factor part. There is the loving, happy couple, the relationship where the wife gives to the husband, and the husband is there, and he takes and gives back. But then there's the scenario I just mentioned. Then there's the other side of that, in that negative loneliness scenario, where there is, the best way to put it, was it on this show or my own show? I mentioned this very recently. I saw a comedy piece by Dave Chappelle, and some of the best comedians out there get into really deep, dark things with their comedy. You look at George Carlin and what he did. He got into some pretty heavy duty stuff for being a comedian. Well, Dave Chappelle does the same. And he's talking about love and relationships and stuff, and his comedy, everybody's laughing. And he says, do you know the only relationship in a family, how did he put it? He says, the man is the only one in the family who love for him is wholly dependent on what he produces. He says, you can love the kids, you can love the wife, and he gives all the reasons, and he built up to that. And he says, but the man, however, is the only one who must produce something in order to gain the love. He says, because if he doesn't produce, the love gets turned off. If he's not producing and not being what he's supposed to be, or the way he's perceived, or the way the wife says, you need to be making this kind of money, and if we're not doing this or driving this or buying that or paying that, if we're ever strapped for money or behind the bit, all of a sudden there's distance, there's loneliness is set in. And Dave Chappelle is right to a certain extent. For the man is the only one who faces in a family conditional love. And that conditional love is based on what he's able to do for the wife and for the family, to provide. I mean, that's the big thing that we say, a man has to be the provider for his family, right? And so that's one factor. The other part of that is there are times where women do to men what men do to women. They have an expectation, and if that expectation isn't what they want, all of a sudden it's shut off. The switch gets flipped. And the men, or it may not even be that overt. It may be something where the wife is like, well, I've never been a cuddly type of person. You were when you met the guy, because he was attracted to that.
Yeah.
There's a sexual attraction with men. There is a sensual attraction with men. There's a touch and feel attraction with them, where when that is suddenly or eventually even over time, you go, wow. It's like the old joke. I heard this a long, long time ago. You remember cars when they used to have the bench seats in the front instead of bucket seats?
I still have the bench.
You've got one. That's right. You got a 67. So the man's driving, and his wife is way over on the other side of the bench seat, leaning up against the door over there. And she looks at him and she says, "What's happened to us? I remember a day where we used to sit together in this car with your arm around me while you're driving." And he looked at her and says, "I haven't changed positions." So, sometimes it's the thing where the wife, what is the thing that drives you away from the man?
I
Is it
think
all?
anything that
Go ahead.
splits you up and
Mhm.
takes away your connection and makes you feel lonely is a big red flag, which
Yes.
you need to look at and go, why am I in this relationship and I feel so alone?
Yeah.
Why? And you may not sleep together. You may be in separate rooms, or you might be in the same bed. And that's even worse, being in the same bed with someone and you're like, there's this feeling so alone. I think anyone who's laid alone at night, in their own bed or sharing it with someone else, and there's this, for me it was worse to share a bed with someone and have that loneliness. It was worse. I
Mhm.
would rather have the bed to myself and not have that loneliness feeling of like, why are they not talking to me, why don't they want me, why, all that kind of stuff. But I think there's a very true saying, it's better to be on your own than to be with the wrong person. And I also think it's very true is that if someone is making you feel lonely in a relationship, especially in a relationship that you're with someone close and they're making you feel alone, that's a massive sign. And if you can't get past that and it doesn't change, that loneliness is going to get worse. Or you'll
And
start to look for something elsewhere to fill that gap.
mhm. And I like what, by the way, what JP says here. Says men tend to be like dogs who give a lot of unconditional love and are often kicked around.
Anymore.
And so I think let's dig a little bit into this lonely factor and what we do about it, because men. I was going to focus on the male part of this. We can get back to the female aspect of this as well. But the male part of this, what is loneliness? It's that feeling that there's no affection. There's no, and people think, well, guys can deal with that. They don't give a lot of affection. Guys do give a lot of affection. Guys are sometimes, they have found, psychologically a hell of a lot more emotional than women are. We just express it differently. Um, and that's not comparing on a scale. It's just saying we tend to be more emotional. We're the ones that go, well, why isn't my wife giving me a hug? How come I hug my wife every day? My wife doesn't hug me back, or things like that. This is what guys will do. And we notice the absence of that. And the absence of that for guys will lead guys to, and frankly, women, I got to tell you this. Now, this isn't, Wendy, particularly dealing with the sole issue of loneliness, but guys in a relationship, women, if you have gotten to a place where you're not doing that much sexually or intimately with your man, do you know that affects your man? Men aren't just like, whatever, pshaw to sex. I say, I can live without it as long as you can't. I get it. I understand.
It goes
And it
both
doesn't even.
ways, though. It goes both ways, though. Don't
It
forget,
does go both
women
ways.
can just feel just as lonely from their
Yes,
guy.
but
It
guys, we feel it's like that dog that loves unconditionally, but never gets pet or gets kicked or pushed away or so on. It doesn't even have to be a big negative thing is being done. It has to be the positive isn't being done. And I'm speaking from a male standpoint, and many men I've talked to that over the years in these situations, it's like, well, my wife just doesn't want to have sex anymore. And remember, for a woman, it might be, well, my husband doesn't want to make love anymore. For a guy, my wife doesn't want to have sex anymore.
It can work both ways. You
It
can
can.
be with a guy and be so attracted and date and live together or whatever the situation is, and they just don't want sex. And you're like, what's wrong with me? Why don't you want me?
Mhm.
And they're almost frightened to pay you any attention in case you jump on them. And I
Right.
think guys probably feel the same way. You're sometimes you just want to feel them. You just want to feel their hug. You just want to feel.
But sometimes, and many times, a woman will hug a man like that, and the man is like, yes, she wants sex.
Yeah.
And so I understand that part too, that aspect.
And
JP says,
you
go
can
ahead.
die from broken hearts. 100% you can die from a broken heart.
Yes, JP. Men hurt from relationships often manifest in the physical. Men literally die from broken hearts. Now,
They do.
you and I, we have talked on this show before, and we've all talked before about how the gut is attached to the heart, the
Yes,
brain is
you
attached to
have
the heart.
brain cells. You have brain cells in the heart. You have,
When you are
and
hurting emotionally
it goes to the
or
heart.
empty emotionally, what happens? It goes right to the physical heart.
Yes, it does.
Why do so many guys die of heart attacks? Why do they die, even if they're the same age? Why are men expected to live shorter lifespans than women? How much of that is connected to the emotional aspects of being men and women? Who are the men that seem to live the longest? Now, I don't know any scientific data behind this, but I'm saying it seems to me that the men I see that live into their 90s and they've been married for 76 years. Are you kidding me? You've been married 76 years to the same woman and they love each other. You can see them, they might bicker, they might do this, they might do, but they hold hands. He's always with his wife, he's always helping. Then he dies, she's dead in a month, or
That is
vice
very
versa.
common. I've known quite a few mature couples. I don't like to say the word elderly because it just don't feel right. But I know a lot of older couples, they lose their partner and then they die of a broken heart. But the thing is, as well, the heart, as I said to you when we did a show a couple of weeks ago, the most primal logic, a primal emotion we have is love. That's the most
Yes.
primal emotion out of everything. Love is number one. And if you get a heartbreak, you have brain cells. So if you're going through torment in your head, it will affect your heart. You'll get palpitations. You'll get, chest pain. You're oh my God, I'm having a heart attack. Your heart. When Henry died, I remember like feeling so much pain. I thought my heart was going to explode. And I think what it is that the body has to get rid of what they're feeling, and if we don't express it and if we don't get it out, it will just implode us. And I think with loneliness from a guy, like I mean, I was worried my mum was going to die very soon after Harry went, because they were like this, and I thought, oh my God, if we can get my mum through it. And my dad was the same. He lost his partner and we thought he was going to go. But you know what? They've now been on their own almost 2.5 years since their partners have gone. And they've actually gone out of their way to go, I'm not going. I don't want to go. I still want to make the most of it, even if I am on my own. And I think that mental attitude gets you through a lot. But if you're in a relationship, like I'm reading Jason's comments down the side.
Yes.
Any kind of emotional hurt from relationships, because we're looking both at men and women here, often manifest in the physical with men. Men literally die from broken hearts. Affirmation and feeling respected is huge for men in terms of feeling valued. And I have to rephrase that. Affirmation and feeling respected is huge for both men and women.
Sure it
It's
is.
not just one side. If a woman doesn't feel that from a guy, or a man doesn't feel that from a woman, you're going to have these issues come up.
Yes.
And I feel that I know of a woman right now, I was always tempted to say the name, but who's very lonely in her life. She has a family. The house is very busy. There's always people coming, but she's so alone in herself. and she feels so at nighttime. The hurt comes out at nighttime, and the whole thing is being alone. When you often see people at a restaurant and they're eating on their own, people think, how can they eat on their own? They're lonely. They go to the cinema on their own. They go shopping on their own. They're getting their food on their own. But I've seen many people on their own in a restaurant. Some are on their phone. Some are experiencing different this, that, and the other. And I know Jason is putting up that men experience that aspect more. I would say women do it too, much more these days. There are so many more women on their own as well. And as a woman, you kind of, and this is the thing, I've been single a while, right? And we talked about this before. When I go to a party, I feel so alone because everybody's in couples and I'm alone. And I'm on my own. And people think I'm going to run off with their husband, right? I'm going to run off with their husband, or I'm going to take their boyfriend or something. And I'm not going to do any of that. I'm literally, hi, how are you? Nice to see you. I have had women tell me, and I quote this, from friends who I see as friends, oh, we do worry you a bit. We do worry a bit, Wendy, because, you're on your own. And you think, what? Well, because I'm on my own, because I'm single, because I'm alone, I'm just going to run off with your husband. I'm going to run off with your boyfriend. Women,
right?
With men who are on their own and they go to parties, it's a little bit different because they're they sort of, but women are seen as predators, I think, if we're on our own. We go to a party and, we made an effort, we look good or whatever. And it's like, oh, you can see all the other women looking at you straight away going,
she's after your man.
Stay away from my husband. You can see it. And my sister was at a party with me recently and she went, if that wasn't a shot over the bow, nothing wasn't. And it makes you feel like, I'll just go home, shall I? Because I'm actually not coming to this party to chat any of you lovely gentlemen up because you're all taken. So people stop doing things when they're alone. We stop getting asked. We stop getting asked because we're on our own. Can you believe that?
I can. Rocky asks, and folks, if you don't know Rocky Stucci by now, you should. You check out his radio show. He and I used to do a lot of radio together. But he said, is it bad to have an established to-do list right after a breakup? What do you mean by to-do, Rocky? No, I don't think that's bad. But you know what I think can build that to-do list? And say, I've already got a to-do list after a breakup. It's what's led up to the breakup. It's all that time in between. Where did my relationship suddenly get to the place where it's in that condition and leads to the breakup? And it's all that time in between. And by the time you're finally done and it's broken up, you've been alone for a hell of a long time.
Well, that's right. You have, because you've been living with yes. Being a roomie. But it is true to say that women, and I hate to say this about my own sex, women see single women as dangerous. A lot of married women see single, alone women as dangerous, where I don't feel that guys at a party would actually look at a guy on his own so much as it's like women have this thing.
They are looked at differently. Single guys at a party and a single woman at a party. Unless that single guy at the party is acting like a single guy at a party. I usually, you could see a single guy at a party and he could be holding his drink.
Yeah.
And not mingling, not doing his thing. Oh, that's Jack. Jack's got divorced a year and a half ago and he's still the lonely guy. Or Jack can't find a girlfriend or whatever. Yeah. And, I think some of that's personality type too, because there's going to be some people that could never function as a lonely person outside because they don't know how to be what's the opposite of being lonely? A not lonely person. I look at me. I've got a personality. People wouldn't know by looking at me at a party if I was somebody who was hurting lonely or hurting single or hurting together or whatever, unless I wanted to share that information with them
In a comment
because I'm
that
outgoing.
Rocky's comment that he's just put up. Can you put that up, Rocky's comment?
What's Rocky say here? Single women feel the wrath of all the insecure married women because they probably let that ass go, if you know what I mean. You talking about the married women? Yeah, I do know what you mean. And guys do that too. I will say this, Rocky. How many women are like, I still love my husband. He's a teddy bear now. He was an athlete with a six-pack when I met him, and he's a fluffy teddy bear now, but I still love him. Guys let themselves go too, but women also do.
You've not had that experience where you walk into a room or you walk somewhere and you just see all the women grab their men as you walk in, and it's not because you look great, and it's not because you got a cleavage or anything like that. It's because they see a single woman as a she's like the lone wolf. She's like circling the block.
Yeah.
For instance,
the cougar, well, that's somebody going for the younger men, but
and he had a girlfriend. We all said to him, please don't date her. She's a nightmare. Please don't date her. But he did, and bless his heart. And she hated every single female friend he had. And we were like, well, I'm so sorry I don't have a boyfriend, just to make you feel better. I'm so sorry that I've actually turned up here on my own. And it's like sometimes you feel like a leper. Remember when we first did our very first show, the very first episode we did of Robertson, we talked about that you're almost like being single and alone is like being a leper sometimes. It's like, it's like, hi, I'm single white female. This is my age. And people sort of looking you, as if you're like, why are you single? Why are you on your own? What's got to be wrong? What's wrong with you? Why are you alone? And I think that you can feel very lonely in a party on your own. You go to make
sure.
You go to see your friends, you go to make a difference, but you feel alone. And I think it's the norm to be in a relationship. And when you're not in a relationship for whatever reason, you can be seen as the lone wolf. But for me, as I said, I stopped going out as much. I stopped doing as much not because I haven't got a partner, but because I think the more time you spend alone, either just two things in which I'm in the middle of, you either get used to being alone and spend more and more time alone, or you desperately want to spend your life and do something with someone, but it's finding that right connection, which is like gold dust. Whereas if you're married and you've got the kids around all the time, when you've got the wife or the partner, your time alone is so precious because you have very little time of it to yourself.
And that's very true. When you're raised, I could go to Rocky and say, you've raised a family. He's got 3 boys that are all now just out of high school. And so he's lived a life for many years, 18 plus years, having a wife and kids at home, never having a lonely moment unless you make them, especially. I'm in that boat. I know lots of guys there, but I know guys that have been in relationships where there is a good public front put on, but at home it's not so good. Yeah. At home it's and you wonder why that is. I've got to throw that in there. Why does that happen to men and women? Why do we end up in so many of us in relationships where the happiness is not there, the happiness is not shared, and there is loneliness? You've got 2 people, and I think one of the lies of our society, our culture, as Western culture, let's put it that way, has been that you have to be independent. You have to look out for number one. You have to, even in a relationship, you can't have a healthy relationship unless you make yourself number one and you do the best for yourself and you love yourself. Blah, blah, blah ad infinitum. Yet what we have seen is that can either lead to a healthy interdependence between a husband and a wife, or a man and a woman. Or that can lead to you've got two isolated people who are independent, functioning, happy, doing well, but lonely as shit because they do not become interdependent in the right way. Oh, I can't be interdependent with a man. Oh, I can't be interdependent with a woman. And that philosophy is what has led to men and women being utterly lonely in their relationships. Well, he doesn't like the same thing I like, or she doesn't like the same thing. She doesn't want to go hunting with the boys. She doesn't want to go smoking cigars with us and drinking cognac. So I do that. Or he doesn't want to, do the things I like to do. He's not into camping, or he's not into, quilting, whatever you want to use. I'm using an extreme there, but it's like, honey, you go do your thing. And then the interest levels start to diverge.
Do you not think
because they don't work at bringing them back together, and then they build loneliness, two lonely people.
Do you not think that your own mental health can make you lonely as well?
Yes.
Because if you suffer from mood swings, depression, and mental health issues, and women, menopause, all things like that, sometimes your own mental health and physical health can make you feel alone. People don't understand. They don't want to understand. So you actually then stop going out and stop mixing with people. And I know you're talking on a couple here, but I also want to the other side of loneliness. There are many reasons why people feel alone, and it's not just one side. And it's like, if you have a condition, if you have an illness, if you have a mental health issue, some people choose to be alone because they're like, I'd rather be alone than have to explain or to deal with what I'm dealing with. Yes. And it's very important that, sometimes people don't tell you they're lonely. They don't show you they're lonely. You have no idea they're feeling lonely. And inside, like people talk about Robin Williams, for instance, let's look at him.
Right.
We knew that Robin Williams was feeling lonely. They never knew that he was going through this. And the man took his own life. And suicide, and I'm using that word, is very common with people that are feeling alone. That's why Samaritans are called. That's why people ring up a chat, helplines. I just need to talk to somebody. I'll go for a walk. Loneliness. Who knew that Robin Williams would do that?
Sure.
I'm sure his wife, when she went to bed that night, did not think that she'd wake up in the morning and find a man who was happily married. He was newly married in that marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And they slept in separate bedrooms due to the fact that he had his mental health issues and he was up and down all night. She had no idea he was feeling like that. And I think he's not the only one that we know of that's done that. And I think sometimes, when do we tell someone we feel lonely? When do we actually open that link and go, I'm struggling here in this relationship, I feel alone, or I'm feeling alone here? Because sometimes our partners don't want to listen. They go, what, you feel alone?
I will tell you something. We encourage people when they are depressed or feeling suicidal or things that we encourage them, talk to somebody, reach out. But do you know what leads to those situations? Loneliness is a step there to those situations. Yet we don't encourage, maybe we do encourage people to talk about their loneliness, but we don't talk about that. People don't talk about their loneliness to their partner or to their significant other or to their closest friends. Not many guys get together and have a drink, have beer and a cigar and go, I've been meaning to tell you, Steve, I'm really lonely. Guys don't do that. It's just not the way they're wired.
Well, I think a lot of men find they feel what's the word? A lot of men find it very hard to tell people how they feel.
Yes.
And to actually admit they're lonely. I think women in general tend to chat away a lot more to their friends or be where men tend to keep a lot more in. So yeah, right. You're probably, they don't talk about it because they think, well, I don't want people to think I'm a complete, like, basket case or a loser, or I'm not, in my masculine power, or whatever that, we've been taught to think.
Sure.
And I do feel for that because, when I worked as a counselor, I talked to a lot of guys that, came for counseling, and men are not really taught to talk about their feelings. Really not, even now, like Vinnie Jones does this whole campaign, and he says, talk. Men should be there for each other. We should hear what the other one's not saying, and ring them up and say, "What's going on? You okay?" And men should talk to each other and should talk more. And it's very true. It
is. And it's hard for guys to break that particular barrier.
Absolutely.
I've got only a couple of friends in life that male friends that I've been that open with because we've given each other kind of this permission or we've come to each other in mutual issues. I got this issue and I got that issue. And yeah, you too. Yeah, you too. Yeah, let's talk about that. Hey, let me punch you in the arm first. Yeah, come on. Now let's talk. We're that way. Or let's get some cigars and talk about it. So that's what guys do. And so women, as you mentioned, they have their different release valves to get that stuff out. But what happens? We can talk to other people about it, but the people we're with are the ones that don't talk about it. The partner we're with or the people. And so we talked about this show being about loneliness. Loneliness isn't only for people who don't have anybody. I think most loneliness that's out there is experienced by people who are supposedly within happy relationships. But those relationships are not happy because those people are all lonely. There's a loneliness there. There's a factor, and I've mentioned this before. We've talked about this before. Separate rooms for couples. Now, I've seen that in, my 87-year-old grandfather or something, or grandma and grandpa have different rooms. Okay. I've seen grandma and grandpas have the same room being in their late 80s. It's the couples that are in their 40s and their 50s, and you're looking at them and you go, how come you have separate rooms? You don't ask that out loud, but you find out, I will tell you this. I did not get married to a woman and want to share my life and have her know every little inch and nook and cranny of my nakedness and my soul and my brain to have a separate room. I didn't, to me, to me, this is just me, feels like being a roommate.
You are roommate.
You go have your good night. I'll see you in the morning for coffee.
I've always said to people that don't, and you don't have to share the bed every night if one of them wants to get some sleep or whatever. But if you're not sleeping, if you're not sharing intimacy, if there is no intimacy, you are roomies. You are not a couple. And I think that's when you lie. Everyone sleeps separate. Sometimes someone's ill, you're in a bad mood, you've had an argument, you
fall asleep on the sofa, your wife leaves you. I didn't wake you up because you were sleeping so nicely.
So you do, but I think when intimacy goes out the window, and I'm not talking sex, I'm talking about pinching your bum, holding your hand, putting your arm around you, giving you a hug. And also intimacy is with your voice, talking to someone. How are you feeling? How are you getting on? How are things for you? And I think that so many people would crave just to have somebody ask them, are you doing okay?
Yeah.
How are you?
And it doesn't even have to be
their partner.
Are you doing okay? It could be, hi, woke up in the middle of the night, saw you moving. Were you dreaming too? What are you dreaming about? What are you talking about? What are you reading? What do you want to do tomorrow morning? Let's go back to sleep so we can wake up and not be tired. Or let's stay up. Let's do whatever. It's having that person there. Now, I am not the king of a country. I know that, historically, the kings and the high nobilities, they had the king's bedchamber, the wife's bedchamber, and never the twain shall meet. Maybe they had secret passages in between, but that was about it. That's not what most of us are. The 99.999% of us, if that's a real number, aren't like that. I did not get married so I could someday have a roommate. I got married. The hope when you couple with somebody is to never have to experience the loneliness of being uncoupled.
Yeah.
And to have the loneliness of being uncoupled within a coupling is even worse, I think.
I think you're right. And one thing I've really appreciated since I've been on my own and I've started to see it, I really miss having someone to cuddle up to at night. Really, really miss that. You know, like reaching out to someone during the night and feeling the hand or the arm around you. It's really, really important. And I think that when you're in a relationship and the other person, there is no intimacy in like that. You feel like, what the hell am I doing? I'm certainly wasting my time. And I could actually go out and be with someone who wants to do that. Why would you put yourself constantly through that?
That's a good question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And there are reasons, I suppose. But why would we also want to put somebody else through that?
100%.
Why would we want to be in a relationship or maintain a relationship that we don't want to be part of, or that we are creating loneliness for the other person and probably loneliness for ourselves too? Why do we want those things? Why do we stay in them? Why is do we think that we're going to live for 400 years?
It's always the nighttime for me that's the worst, because I don't know about you, Scotty, but when I'm on my own at night, obviously your brain goes over stuff, but it's the heaviness of the quiet and the dark, and things are magnified. You end up feeling more alone. I feel more alone at night because, you know, than I would in the daytime, because you're lying there and your partner is either not with you or they're in the other room, and you're just like, I just, you know, as human beings, we need to have touch, and we need to feel wanted and desired, and we need to feel held. And you talk to so many people that go, I just need a hug. I just need a hug. I just want to feel like, and it's a different one. Oh, here you are. There you go. There's a little hug for you. You want someone to really hug you and feel that their person.
You want somebody to soak you in, is what it is. It's the soaking in. It's the taking in. It's the, exactly.
Andrew, I understand where you're coming from. And there he is.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Hello, sweetie.
Hey.
Long
time no speak.
Yeah. It's only been like, what, 48 hours, if that?
Yeah, not like that. Yeah.
36.
Yes.
You know, I was going to call in earlier when I saw that you threw up the link, but I was driving and I remembered that my sound system doesn't like to sync to my phone, and
I was just prepping you all for. You can call in at we're approaching 5 o'clock, so.
You know, you brought up about, you know, men don't talk about things unless there's that special, you know, permission.
Right.
You know, and it's interesting. You know, there's a lot of societal dynamics there with that, right? You look at, you know, our parents' generation, our parents' generation, and things like that. You know, the greatest generation, the quiet generation.
Yes.
There was a lot of, you don't talk about these things, you just do.
You just do.
You know what? You can sit there and you can stew in something all day long, and it's not going to get you anywhere. Just buckle down and do it. But you look at, like, with the greatest generation, and even into, like, you know, the Korean War era and Vietnam, right? Those era guys. We had outlets for stuff like that, right? We had the VFW, we had the Foreign Legion, or excuse me, the American Legion.
The American Legion or the Foreign Legion?
The Foreign Legion. That's where you snuck off to if you did war crimes during the Second World War.
That's right.
Fallschirmjäger guys jumping into Dien Bien Phu. Was in the 50s. But that's where you could go and you could talk about things. And there's a catharsis in the sharing of war stories and the drinking and commiserating over battles won, battles lost, men lost, things like that. That, there is a therapy in that, and you went there to do that. But then you start looking at the later generations and you look at things, and this is one aspect of men and how we deal with things, but that was that safe space kind of thing, like you're talking about, where you could discuss those things and talk about your problems, or talk about the things that led to the problems that you have, and talking about them works through things, and it's interesting to kind of see how opinions and thoughts on dealing with that from the male aspect or from the warrior aspect, if you're, prior service or something, has changed over the years, and where there's a lot of things that were really good but have kind of become undermined because you don't see as many people signing up for things like the VFW or Legion.
I'm going to ask you a question, Jason. How often do you? I don't want to go on the houses. I just want it up. Fact. How often do you feel alone?
Well, here recently, a lot.
And what do you do when you feel like that?
I try to make myself busy with something if I can.
Mm-hmm. And is nighttime a tough time for you? Is it worse at night?
Yeah, I would say that's fair. That's a fair statement. Nighttime tends to be, that is definitely when I get most restless and most in my own head. Is during the night. The quiet hours. There is nothing going on. There are no major, unless you go out hunting for them. But I typically don't go hunting for that stuff very often in general anyway.
Do you find as a guy, and the reason I'm asking this, because by bringing it down to certain points, other guys that are watching it, or even women that don't know their guys are going through it, will understand, like, you find it really hard to say to somebody, I'm lonely, I feel alone?
That is purely audience dependent. I'll be completely honest. There are some male friends, female friends, older friends than me, even some who are in a younger age group than me, that I am absolutely comfortable with talking about whatever it is. And then there's some people that it's just like, hey, I'm there for you, buddy. Hey,
yeah.
Thanks. So it really just varies on the person.
Does loneliness hurt? Does loneliness hurt?
Sometimes it does. And for me, when it starts to hurt is usually like, and you kind of know some, a bit about my most recent kind of situation. It's when you have that time to sit there and reflect on the why, the what is even going on, the questions that you get left with, when you're, in a situation like I am, for audience perspective, so they understand, somebody basically disappeared, checked out of my life for, a good month before I even heard a little bit out of them. And it was, significant other type kind of thing. And it's like, what even happened? And even when you do know that there are certain circumstances with that individual, they retreat. They absolutely retreat inside of themselves when they're going through mental health issues. And that's bad.
Sure.
But that's one of those things, and you look at the odd behaviors with that, and you start questioning and thinking about that. It's like, I'm here. You can talk to me about anything. I'm not judgmental. The only time I get judgmental is when you're being an absolute, shitty human being, kind of thing. You know, I'm not judgmental. I'm going to listen. I'm going to offer feedback if you want it. You know, if you don't want it, hey, I'll just listen. And then to, you know, delete themselves from that lifeline.
Can people? Here's a question, yes or no, really, on this one. But can people make us lonely? Yes,
absolutely. I've definitely been in that situation. I mean, I made my comment, you know, nothing like sobbing yourself to sleep when the person next to you in bed, you know, won't put their arm around you even for just a little bit, or let you put your arm around them for a little bit.
So we're talking about loneliness and everything, but it's like, what can we do to ease some of the loneliness? What would help to help get through these tough times? Obviously, Scotty's talking about like in a partnership. I'm obviously talking it from more being on my own. Like, what eases or what can soothe? What can we do to soothe ourselves through this loneliness?
Blackjack and poker. No, I'm kidding. I'm absolutely kidding on that. But no, being busy is a really good thing to do. You know, there's the old adage, you know, idle hands, the devil's plaything. And it's true. And it's not just about like you get into trouble, you know, because you're not doing nothing or, you know, whatever. It's also the fact that if you are busy doing things, your mind can't sit there and stew in the negative things. Like it's, yeah, you just sit there and you stew and stuff. It gets bad. You know, like you'll drive yourself insane. But that's kind of, for me, I think, is probably one of the biggest things that somebody can do is.
But when we do that, are we just burying things so we don't have to deal with them?
I personally, for me, I think there is a little bit of that. There is a little bit of burying, but I think if you do things right, it's not a bad burying. Sometimes you've got to tamp things down and do things so you can kind of let things process and matriculate slowly, like it filters through. And if you get doing things and you kind of start, you know, finding yourself looking back and being like, oh, you know, this was actually a really bad thing, and I probably shouldn't have put up with this, or this was a tough situation and I should have handled things differently this way. It becomes a bit easier to reflect if you're being healthy in your activities.
This is an interesting point, though. Have we individually, the three of us, on our own terms, have we made someone else feel lonely? Because I know
I'm sure I probably have, and it is completely unintentional, because I tell you what.
Well, that's the thing. See, you and I are guys, so you and I have that innate ability to alienate the woman that is our partner, or to make them feel useless or lonely without even realizing we did it. Then we end up divorced and we go, did I do something?
I don't. What?
So that's what guys do. That's
but like that's one of those things too, where it's like, and you know, I hope, you know, there's a reasonable amount of women who are watching things like this, because I'll tell you, at least from this man's foxhole, all right, with you know, okay, you see all the memes floating around on the internet where it's the couple in bed and the guy's like looking like he's deep in thought.
He's thinking about
he's probably thinking of other women, and then he's like, you know, I've been doing this for the last 4 days, and you know, I've been going through it. Suck, squeeze, bang, blow. I can't get the engine to run. Is it the carburetor? Is it all of those things are going through a dude's mind. The furthest thing from other women or whatever, and you know, and you have that kind of thought play going on there. You know, that's very much a real thing. You know, as an ADHD guy, I get into my own head and I sit there and I think about things and I ponder over things, or I get hyper focused on something. And it's like, dude, I have a hard enough time realizing how many hours in the day have passed since the last time I checked my watch.
Rainey has said to me on many occasions I would love to have you go get checked to see if you have some kind of ADHD or something. And I say, no, I'm just focused. I'm just focused on the things I do. But I'm like you, Jason. I've seen you sewing your hats. I've seen you working on stuff. I could sit here and do a painting, an illustration, or be working on something.
Yeah.
And I look at the clock and it's 2:10, and then I'll look up again and it's 8:30, and I'm like, have I been doing this for 6 hours?
Yeah.
So
and that's so like I have unintentionally made people feel lonely because of that.
You're here now, Niall, by the way.
Right?
You're catching a bit of it.
Yes, who's that?
Huh?
Who's that that's come on?
Oh, that's Niall. No, he's just out there. He said, sorry, I missed the show. He said, it's still going on, so you're catching it.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think what I wanted to get at the point is that sometimes I don't want to beat around the bush. I just want to be basic because people are listening, and it's like, what do we do to soothe our, right, keeping busy is great. Keeping busy is great, but you can't keep busy 24/7, right?
No, you can't.
So what do you do in those moments when you feel so alone, whether you're in that relationship or whether you are on your own, and it overwhelms you? What do you do in those moments?
You know, a lot of times
you do. Jason, hold on. I was going to say you do what Jason just described, which says to me that Jason, maybe you admitted this already, and you don't need me admitting it for you on here, but let me give you a parallel. I was once told a very long time ago by somebody in counseling, they said, why don't you ever slow down? Do you ever stop? Why are you always doing one thing bumped up against the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, and you're overlapping them? She said, have you ever stopped? And she said, a great sign of somebody who is dealing with inner turmoil. She didn't use the word lonely. She was talking about other things, abuses, things like that, inner turmoils. What do guys do? We fill our hours until we are so exhausted, we fall asleep.
We do.
Well, that's actually, I was kind of going to touch on that, like when the last time I was in Afghanistan, 18 into 19, initially there was like a week when I got there, whereas like I felt very alone. Every other time I'd been downrange, it was with all of my battle buddies, my colleagues, and I knew everyone in the unit, and all of that. The last time I went, it was I'm the only dude going to the office that I'm going to, and I'm basically doing everything on my own until I figure out who it is that I'm working with and establish things. And so there were a couple of points where I had these like just really lonely and just having a hard time coping, and then I just threw myself into my work, and then I hit the gym every night and did a hour or hour and a half of cardio, and focused on the things that I needed to do and things I wanted to take care of, and you know what, it passed.
But I just want to say, like, because when I went to Calgary for the first time, I couldn't stay in the property all day. I had to leave the property. So he was at work and I was walking around town in a town I didn't know, thousands of miles away from home, on my own with very limited resources. And I've never felt so alone, being somewhere which was wonderful, but I was alone, and I would have done anything to have heard a British accent. I remember I used to listen out and think, please let me hear somebody, like somebody talk to me. I remember sitting in the coffee shop and everyone watching everyone together, everyone's having coffee together or having dinner together. And I was there alone. And even though I was there for a good reason to be with my ex-husband, I felt so alone in myself. And it was like, oh my God, everybody I know is thousands of miles away. And there's only so many times you can walk around the shops, go shopping, eat something, read a magazine. So, loneliness comes in that form. And what do we do in that moment? You have to work through it. You have to go through it. You have to plow through it. You've got no other option.
Well, and that's one of those things too. I've kind of found that, I've gotten to a point where I don't mind going to eat dinner by myself, go to the cinema by myself, go to the coffee shop by myself. Right. Table for one, please. And, at one point I used to do that sort of thing where you go in there and you're like, oh, only fucking couples are all together and why can't and like you stew in it. And then at some point it's like, hold on, wait a minute. Why am I griping about this? I can do what I want when I want. I don't need anybody's permission. I don't need to worry about if I'm ruining somebody else's schedule. I don't need to worry about if I'm offending someone. And quite frankly, I like going to the movie by myself. It's probably better that way because I make too many funny comments in the movie. So
Niall's got something to say here, I'm sure. But before I bring him in, you make me think there's an old song. When I was in church working with youth, there was a songwriter, Wayne Watson, and he was contemporary Christian artist at the time. And he wrote this song on his new album at the time it came out. And it was such a great song. But the first verse says, it's good to be lonely every now and again, to be parted from the ones you adore, to sit at a table for two all alone and take a look at the world around you, at people who have no one to go home to, some with no place to belong, others consumed by their weakness, and others when weak seem so strong. And then he goes into his chorus. I remember that song. It was a very, very acoustical piece.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you, Jason, what you just said.
Do you have
Go ahead, Niall. You might be making the point I want to make, and I'll let you make it.
Do you have No, it's okay. No, I was just going to ask you the lyrics to that song.
Yeah.
Do you have them in text form? I presume.
I do. I'll get them for you.
Would you mind sending them to me because
it's a very Christian
very
song
and very
so. I'll get it for you. I'll send it to you right now while you're talking.
Absolutely, cool. Thank you very much. You can send them on Facebook or something, whatever suits you. Yeah, thank you, brother. Hey, sure. Wendy, how are you?
Hello, sweetie. I'm all right. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing fine. I just thought I'd jump on for a minute. JP, how are you doing, brother?
Another beautiful day in paradise.
I jumped in on the after show. I think I jumped in somewhere between PTSD and ADHD, somewhere around that. I think you were talking about that stuff. And I was like, well, this wasn't exactly what I expected.
Last week's show.
Somewhere between
there's a bit of circling around multiple topics.
I remember. I just remember the wording of the show as lonely as the world.
Lonely in the crowd, something like that. I think
lonely in the crowd. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
I was speaking to a couple of friends about this very topic. I've always been a kind of a lonely person. Some people don't understand that. I suppose some people feel that if you're happy with being lonely, if you're happy to be a loner, that is something that is very unique to people in general.
Yeah.
But I would say that loneliness is different from being alone. For being comfortable in being alone is very different from loneliness. Loneliness is
I don't mind being on my own, but loneliness is very different, isn't it? Very different.
Well, in loneliness, there's something missing. There's an aspect that's not there. There's an emptiness. When you're alone and you're comfortable in your singularity of existence at that point, there isn't necessarily that hole that needs to be filled, that ache for something that's not there. Some of it though, you can learn to go from being lonely, being okay with I'm alone.
Scotty, I'll
right.
call back in because I think it's my connection is really bad, so I'm going to call back in and
Okay.
if that's okay.
We aren't going to be going too much longer, but yeah, go
well,
ahead.
Give me 10 minutes. All right, give me 10
Okay.
minutes.
Some of us
Thank you.
going to bed.
Yeah. And I have family upstairs to tend to, so
I think
yeah, it's one of those things. So
you know, what I would say to people is, if you are lonely, there are people out there that you can talk to, such as the Samaritans and people like that are open 24 hours a day, and will listen and be there. You can also go to your doctor and ask talking therapies or counselling, etc. If you find that very difficult, nature's very good. Going for a walk, putting your feet on the bare grass and feeling it, getting grounded, helping someone else out. You know, if you find it really hard to tell someone how you're really feeling, you know, that's the hardest thing, because if you don't know what to do, if you don't know how to say it to someone, that's the biggest problem. But if you can, even if you do it in passing, even if you do it through something, it's like, reach out to someone, go somewhere.
yes.
I mean, how many people go to libraries? If they still go to libraries these days, we still have them over here, and you see them reading a book on their own. They're happy to be on their own. But what happens if you're lonely? This is, if someone said this to me once, but you don't know what you're lonely for, but you feel that feeling, but you don't know why. But it's like, I feel alone, but I shouldn't feel alone.
When you just pop in some Roy Orbison, crank it up, and sing along to "Only the Lonely" in your house or in the car, or you know, whatever.
Great movie.
Only the Lonely.
John Candy, brilliant movie. Loved it.
Niall, we've got just a few minutes left. What's on your mind, brother?
Sure. Yeah, it's always a pleasure to see Wendy and yourself together. You look very
Great to have you.
dapper as usual, Scotty.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Wendy, you look beautiful as always.
Thank you.
JP, always talking the talk, my friend. Always a pleasure.
Always.
I just want to say that I just came in from a great meal with a group of friends who I hadn't seen in some time, and it was a wonderful experience. But I'm glad to be home. Loneliness, and being alone is a very difficult thing to kind of separate in your mind. I think that being with a loving partner is not something, you know, that I necessarily aspire to, or you know, at my age. But being with friends is very important. So you know, and also being capable of forgiving yourself for past mistakes, and being at one with yourself, and just being able to accept your own company is extremely important. Because if you can't accept that, you'll be living in a nightmare forever. You'll just replay everything in your dreams over and over again about all the remorse and all the stuff you should have got right,
well,
all the stuff you failed at, all the relationships that were, you know, you damned, you know, all this kind of stuff, and it'll just replay in your mind over and over again like a loop. Unless you can come to terms with who you are. Like, some people are not everyone is born to be a family man, you know. Not everyone is born to be in a relationship of any kind. Some people are born to be on their own, you know. But sure, you know, isolation is a disease. It can turn into a disease if you make it that way. So it's important to have, if you're not a family person, or if you're not a relationship person, and you don't like that commitment, or that commitment is not something you feel that you can enable, then friends is vitally important. If you get to the stage where it's just you, yourself, me, myself, and I talking to, you know, if you're just talking to yourself, that's the worst thing ever. So it's important to have friends. You know, romantic relationships come and go. You know, for some people, they're, you know, you have to have them. You know, you just have to have the yin and yang kind of thing going on. For me, no, it's just, that would drive me crazy. You know,
in my case, have a dog. because dogs and animals, great companions. But Niall's right, because the relationship you'll have the longest in your life will be with yourself. And if you are not happy in yourself to spend time with yourself, and you know, as what's his name? Oh my God, famous drag queen, RuPaul said,
Izzy Izzard.
if you don't love yourself, how the hell are you going to love anyone else? Like if you can't love yourself, how the hell are you going to be with anyone else?
Listen, like, I am very comfortable with myself. If I was a lonely guy or alone, look at my surroundings. This is the world I live in. This is what it's like. I am filled with things. And like Niall, I've got my friends. I'd be down at the pub, or I'd be doing my reenacting stuff with friends, and things like that. I have so many things that make up and comprise who I am as a person. I would never be a quiet, lonely guy making mac and cheese and watching reruns of Friends the rest of my life. It's just not my thing.
Well, the reruns of Friends is what would force me to start my pistol. But like,
there it is.
And I think
can we
Wendy
find
would
a better show?
agree with this that loneliness and being alone are completely different things.
Yes.
Being alone. Like I spend most of my day alone, but my friends are always there. My regrets, they're always there too. The worst place to be, let me put it this way, the worst place to be is on your own, alone, in your own head, 24 hours a day. If you're in that place.
So true.
It reminds me of the Bruno Mars song where Leonard Nimoy did the music video for it. Sometimes I don't feel like doing anything. And it's got Leonard Nimoy shuffling around town in his robe and boxer shorts, buying groceries, watching William Shatner on TV and changing the channel. Getting annoyed. Yeah. So it's, that's the song. And some people are like that. Chuck Thurston says, I'm comfortable being alone and just doing nothing when I want to. And there's nothing wrong with that.
I had Henry for 11 years and I never felt alone when I had him because it was full on and it had a companion. Since he's been gone, I can honestly say I probably feel more alone and I wonder if he hadn't been there for all those years, would I have felt alone more? Probably I would do. And because I tend to recluse myself and shut myself away quite a bit. And people go, where's Wendy? She's disappeared because I recluse myself and I disappear. And I think, do we recluse ourselves and become more alone because it's our way of dealing with things and coping with things? Yes. Or is it because we just think, what's the point of talking about it? Because A, I can't, B, people don't want to listen, or C, I'm not sure what the reaction is going to be of some people because, like people we know can come up with comments sometimes and you're like, what? Where did that come from? Like, even in a relationship, your partner can turn around and say something to you. You'll work up the courage to say something to them and say, actually, and then the next thing you know, they floor you. They floor you with a comment and you're just like, I don't know where to go from that. So you just recluse in. And go, what's the point of talking to you? You don't want to hear what I got to say. So
absolutely. And
you kind of touched on something interesting there. Your partner coming up and saying something, right? I very much like Scotty, and it sounds like a lot like Niall.
Really?
I'm okay being alone.
Yeah.
Right. I'll find something to do. I'll find a way to entertain myself through the hours. I love my friends. I love spending time with my friends, etc. But like sometimes you have a partner come up and say something to you and it's like, why aren't you doing anything with your friends? What about all your friends? All you do is just go do something. And you're like, why? I'm cool where I'm at.
I'm doing what I want to do.
shoveling it on you and shoveling it on you. Like how many times can I tell you in a different phrasing, I need to switch to different languages, Morse code, spell it out in a large sign? Like, I'm okay not hanging out with my friends and not doing anything. And I'm okay not hanging out with my friends and spending time and just enjoying being in the vicinity of you guys. Like, I'm perfectly happy with that. Like, so that's like, like a lot of people don't understand, like Niall was saying, that, alone is very different from being lonely. And people equate the two, right? And it's not the case at all. Yeah.
And I think what's most important to take out of this conversation is that being in a relationship can be a pain in the ass most of the time, as you just outlined.
There's truth to that.
Yeah, because you have to sacrifice so much of yourself.
I love my wife, but being in a relationship, sometimes
you have to watch your P's and Q's, and you have to watch. We're going to see this person, and you have to act a certain way. And
right,
no matter what type of relationship you're in, you're always going to fall into that scenario.
Sure. But it comes up at that point.
I expect you to act a certain. There's expectations,
Why?
All expectations.
I can be hype in public, damn it.
Why would you want to be with anybody who makes you feel lonely? And I will say that again. Why? It's not going to be answered here tonight. But why would you want to?
I think it never will be answered.
Because at the end of the day, it's like, they will continue to make you feel lonely. So you've got a choice. There's also a good question. Can someone make us feel lonely? Can they make, or is it something in us that we are, of course they can, but is there something in us as well that needs something from someone else, especially our partner? And if we don't get it, as I said before, if we don't get it before and we continue not to get it, the gap gets bigger and wider.
And it seems to me that these are then the people who become the people who no longer look for that, and they're the ones that close it off. And they go, I don't need that anymore.
I mean,
they've made that choice. So
the unconditional love is non-existent except outside of the relationship that you might have with your parent or a sister or
I
somebody very close to you.
I have to respectfully disagree with that.
Okay, that's fine. No, everyone is different, but I'm saying in general.
I have the scars to prove it emotionally.
There are exceptions. I have an unconditional friendship with an ex-partner who used to be a sexual partner, and but we ended up we couldn't bear, we got on so well together, even though we were incompatible sexually through orientation, that we couldn't bear being together because we got on so well together. So we said, listen, this is outrageous. We can't, even though our orientation is not the same, we have to stay in touch, and 12 years on,
going.
We are like the best friends. We'd be lost without each other.
Yeah.
And partners have come and gone. Some partners have said to her, who's this guy why are you so close? And we've had to explain ourselves. It's like, okay, if you fall in love, just let me know. I'll disappear, as if that's going to happen. And this person who I'm talking about is a trans person, and we have been not sexually compatible, but we've been friends for 12 years, and we just couldn't live without each other. But it's sexually, it just couldn't work. But she has gone through various relationships, and I've had to explain myself on many occasions to these men and these women, because she's very explorative about her own sexuality, which is fine. And do I get jealous occasionally? Yeah, because sometimes I wish that I had that thing that she wanted, but I didn't. And that thing that I wanted,
question, my friend.
it was the smallest thing. And when you nail it down, our friendship is much more important than the smallest thing about our sexual compatibility. Our friendship has turned into like hours and hours and weeks and days. I buried her father. I buried her mother. I buried one of her brothers. I was there at the birth of one of her son, a very young child, just recently. It's like, it's like, and for her partners, they get very jealous of this, even all these years later. And I'm like, it's just, so sometimes you can have a mental connection with somebody, which is so profound and so overwhelming, which kind of
it's like a soulmate story.
Excludes sexuality in a way.
I will tell you, and this is a topic for a different show, Wendy, but I have had very good friends like that, Niall, that I am that close to, that I love. I've had people say, well, are you guys gay? No, it's not that kind of a love for this person. I've had friends like that, and I got to tell you, to this date, there's not a single one of them that are still here. That's Uncle Dave. It's a different. He died, but there's some of my friends that are just. I don't have close friends like that anymore because, for some reason, they all either ended it or moved on to something else. It became less important to them after years and years. Not because anything phenomenal happened. It's because just the situation's changed.
Yeah.
And with Dave died. And so I don't have that. So I crave that as a guy. I crave that close, intimate friendship, and not intimate in a sexual way. I'm talking intimacy in that way that says I need that from somebody. And we've got to almost end on that note because I have to go.
Okay.
But I hate
could
to
stay
do that.
over here all night,
about...
but another night. Great to see you, Wendy.
And you, lovely. Take care.
Thanks for calling in, Niall. Good to see you, brother.
Let me know when the next time I can get on with you and your sisters.
Right on, you got it.
On Sunday, obviously, Wicked Women, 10 o'clock. Come and check us out. Wicked Women, AAA.
Hey, Gina. Gina Mottler came in.
It's like that show on English TV, women girls. Yeah.
No, we're not like that at all. We're not like that at all. Honestly,
Friends.
we're not. Loose
like
women.
Show
we
Friends.
Are like that.
Right, Jason?
He will tell you.
We gotta find a different show.
Loose women. Yeah.
Niall, take it easy, brother. Talk to you soon.
Always a pleasure. Listen.
Hey,
Let
to let you go. See ya. Jason, same for you. Hate to let you go, but we'll see you later. Thanks for being here.
Bye.
Wendy, always not a pleasure letting you go.
I know.
So,
Here it comes, that moment that you and I dread, the music.
I know. But we'll have to make up for it in other ways. So.
I hope you've made it. Hope it's helped someone tonight. I hope people have got a few tips from it of what to help going.
Yes, and you too.
And we'll be back next Tuesday. You'll
same
be back
time
tomorrow and Friday.
Yeah, we've got tomorrow is what do we got tomorrow? Intrepid Radio. We have Intrepid Radio on Friday.
KB show tomorrow morning. KB Castle by the roadside, right?
Yes, KB's morning coffee with KB.
He will be on first of all, and then I think Val might be doing Myth, Legend, and the Paranormal tomorrow night.
Right.
And then just before you, I think, and then you come on with Intrepid Radio, and then Intrepid Radio. Yep.
He's out there in the audience.
Who is?
Ken just checked in. He says, "Hey guys."
Hey guys. And then on Sunday, Wicked Women will be back at 10 o'clock.
There you go.
Time,
and I've got It's Sunday Morning with yours truly, 9 a.m.
It's you again on Sunday, Scotty, just at different times.
That's right. All right, Wendy. I will get us out of here. Everybody, thank you for being here. Thanks for being part of the show.
Music.
And Wendy, as always, I love you. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
You have a good night. Live long and prosper, everyone.